Did the Fed make the right call yesterday considering the turmoil in the aftermath?
First, everybody knows inflation is still running too high. It's running about 4.5% using the PCE deflator. It's just too high. So for the Fed to have stopped relative to that, I think would have been a mistake and would have undermined confidence and actually would have been a very negative result. Secondly, if the Fed had paused, I think the implication would have been the banking turmoil is much worse than all you guys think. And I think that would have been destabilizing from a market point of view, and the Fed knew that. So for those two reasons, I think it made the right decision. We'll see, based on the data, as they said in their statement, whether this is the end of the hiking cycle or it isn't. But I think as far as yesterday is concerned, right.
Can you explain why you think the psychological effects of another rate hike would be more destabilizing than the actual move itself? How can we be sure that inflation isn't already headed up given the credit contraction and other factors, and is this a psychological or actual concern?
We don't. And in fact, our view on the research side of Evercore is that we are going to have a moderate recession in the second half of the year. Then inflation by the end of the year will be around 3%. And that by the middle of 2024, or perhaps a little earlier, it'll probably hit the Fed's 2% target. But I think for the Fed to have stopped and said, we've done it, for them to have stopped yesterday and then turned out to be wrong, and they could have been wrong in terms of inflation not trending down in the direction everybody wants.
What do you think the impact of the credit tightening from the regional bank crisis will be in terms of overall tightening?
Well, I think the combination of QT and some of lesser lending capacity or willingness is relevant. And I'm not smart enough to know whether that's 100 basis points equivalent on the funds rate or what precisely number that is, but I think that is relevant, yes.
Why would you exclude the possibility of a Fed rate cut later this year, given that the credit tightening resulting from the regional bank crisis could result in a 100 basis point tightening, even if the Fed said they would be a 100 basis points higher right now?
I don't know that the Fed won't cut at all by year end, but the spread in the federal funds futures markets, as you were talking about earlier, between the Fed's official forecast of the funds rate at the end of the year, which is in round numbers 5.25%, and the futures market's forecast, which is up to 100 basis points lower than that depending on the day, that implies a series of cuts. That I doubt.
Some people who don't normally agree with Senator Elizabeth Warren found her agreeable. It seems that raising interest rates on the supply side can be inflationary and dampen job growth, making it difficult for new businesses to start and borrow money. While the Fed may use interest rates as a tool to control the economy, it's not a perfect solution. Do you agree?
The degree to which the Fed originally misjudged the tenacity of this inflation, as we all know. But I think the primary cause is the pandemic. And if you step way back, the economy stopped. Everyone was at home. Large recycling of stimulus payments. Or economy starts up much faster than people think. People are at home. They can't spend on the normal things they spend on, going out to eat, travel, hospitality. They have a lot of liquidity because most people retain their jobs and they received these payments, and they couldn't spend on a lot of traditional things. So what did they do? They spent it on goods, especially goods that pertain to the home. Might have been a bicycle, might have been a grill, might have been whatever you can do DIY at home. Demand for certain types of goods was huge, outstripped the capacity on the supply side. You saw inflation on the goods side. It leaked over to the services side, particularly in terms of labor. And to me, that's the main cause of this.
Altman says, keep raising rates to maintain confidence and address inflation. Pausing would signal banking turmoil is worse than it is. Pausing the rate hikes would exacerbate issues and cause market turmoil, would also signal Fed knows something about banks that markets don't. Altman predicts a moderate recession in the second half of 2023 and decline in inflation to 3% by year end. He believes that Fed shouldn't pause in raising rates to catch up for being late to address inflation. Stopping now and being wrong about inflation would be catastrophic. Feds need to keep raising rates to catch up despite a difficult year. He believes that the regional bank crisis could lead to tightening of around 100 basis points on the funds rate due to a combination of quantitative tightening and lesser lending capacity and willingness. He notes the possibility of a Fed cut, but spread between Fed's official forecast and futures market forecast implies series of cuts that are unlikely. He argues higher interest rates from Fed's rate hike can be inflationary for businesses and individuals, dampening the employment and expansion. And he suggests that the pandemic caused surge in demand for certain goods, leading to inflation on goods side and strain on supply side, particularly in terms of labor.